Lylan 12.23, June 9th, 2311 AD. Daniel approached, soaring through the skies in the emissary's body, and saw the facility, its faux weapon highly visible in the center. It was a clever ploy by the humans, but it would never have worked. He would have called their bluff, waited out the time they alleged he would have had remaining with confidence, and then crushed the entire site from afar by raining hell down upon it from above. Luckily, it had remained undiscovered the whole time. Luck Lylan had a strong hand in. It was her baby, a machine born of immeasurable blood and sacrifice, an impossible device made real. For thousands of years, her sole aim, her only purpose, was to subvert Daniel by keeping him from being born until the time was right, and to see the development and construction of the Angel Maker. The moment had finally come. She was finally going to destroy him. The two of them looked together at the scene, both seeing through the emissary's eyes as Daniel landed just outside the transparent dome, and they locked eyes for a moment amid the blare of the sirens and flash of the lights. The glass of the dome standing between them, not to mention the invisible force field, a field that resonated on the same frequency as the human spirit. Were any person to cross through the field while it was active, it would render their soul from their body, pulling their soul across the field faster than their body could be moved. Once activated, it could not be undone. As soon as the field was breached, the Angel Maker would automatically trigger, and the 20-second countdown would initiate. Any soul trapped in the dome at the end of the 20 seconds would be scrambled and dissolved. If Daniel were in the end to defy his destiny and leave Lylan alone in the machine, turning his back on his children, she would be forever trapped. For if she were to attempt to breach the energy field, she would herself trigger the mechanism and find her own body bereft of her spirit with 20 seconds left to exist. But that wasn't going to happen. Everything was happening exactly the way she'd predicted. She would soon be dead with the demon alongside her. Soon it would be time for her final goodbye. She only wished that she could have been with Hemha at the end, but at least she would die with the solace of knowing that she accomplished what she'd set out to do and had made the world safe again for her love. Daniel had the nerve to smile at her, and she broke from their one-way glare and flipped the switches that disabled the sirens and flashing lights. The faint sounds faded from Lylan's ears, and it shortly became so quiet that she could hear her own heartbeat, a crooked thumping, weakened by her mysterious heart condition. She returned to where she had stood before, directly across from the demon, and said, "The glass is soundproof, but I can still hear you the same way that you can hear me. I've got your pawn's ears, and you've got mine. So, speak, unless you're ready to die without having shared any final words." His children were still watching the broadcast, but they could not hear his responses. They could see him in the footage, but they only heard Lylan's side of the brief conversation, so they didn't hear him when he said, "Emma, stop this. Come back to me. Why are you doing this?" "My name is Lylan, demon. There was never such a thing as Emma Carter. There was only me. She is part of the whole again that she'd forgotten, a collective with but one purpose in life, to put a stop to you," she said. "But why?" he asked. Hundreds of thousands of his spirit forms stood at the ready nearby, with more and more steadily accumulating. They were coming from all over, but remaining invisible, merged with the surroundings, so as not to make Lylan suspicious. "Revenge," she said simply. The smile began to fade from his face as he repeated her. "Revenge? Revenge for what?" "For taking my entire world away from me," she said. "For forcing my hand and making me commit the atrocities I have had to commit over the ages." "Wait, you're mad at me because of something you did?" he puzzled. "The blood on your hands belongs squarely to you, Emma." "My name is Lylan," she said. "Your name is Emma Carter," he said. "You are my child and I love you. Come out of there so that we can talk face to face. You're being ridiculous." She paused momentarily and then said, "Are you ready to die now? Like I said, this only ends one of two ways. If I were you, I would have taken the opportunity to say goodbye that I afforded you. You are going to regret having missed the opportunity when you are counting down the seconds to your end in here with me. You're not coming out. He didn't even try to fake a smile anymore. You're going to let yourself die? Sacrifice yourself for them? Maybe I did underestimate you. I see what you're trying to do, Daniel. Please do try. You think that you can disable the Angel Maker from the outside, but the only way that you can get close enough to do that is if you were to breach the energy field. Your attempt, futile as it is trying my patience, she said, and she held up the triggering mechanism. He heard so many of his children cry at once, saw so many of them shrink away in fear at the sight of the archaic trigger device, every last one of them doing nothing but watching the Angel Maker broadcast. He held a hand up indicating for her to stop and said, "Okay, just put it down. Surely we can reach some kind of compromise. What is it that you want?" A sneer ran across her face and a tear left her eye, and she said, "I want to live in a free world in peace with the man I love, but it can never happen while you live, and the one and only way to kill you is to sacrifice myself. So I have nothing left to live for, demon, and it is all because of you. There is no way out of this for either of us." The man you love? Daniel looked sideways at her, trying to put together the picture she was painting, but obviously lacking pieces. He continued to close in on their location, his many spirit forms taking the shortest path, a straight line to reach her, most cutting through the earth to reach her fastest, including one that had come from the exact opposite side of the planet and was rapidly nearing the Earth's core. "Yes. Why do you think that my heart has been inexplicably failing since the onset of my powers? Because it is broken, doomed to never again know the warmth of my love and slowly dying without him. I had to keep him hidden from you, but when we are dead, it will finally be safe for him to emerge, and the world that was always meant to be his will finally settle into its proper place." She wiped a tear away. "What about my children? What about my people?" he said, becoming visibly angry. "Your people?" she scoffed. "Let me tell you about your people. The humans are vile, horrible, contemptuous, murderous, lying, raping thieves who care nothing for anything beyond their own selfish desires, collectively driven on by hate and fear more so than by any other force. You know this to be true. You saw what they did, how they behaved the instant they were free again to act in their own self-interests. They are petty, self-absorbed, dangerously violent animals, and little besides. You know, I had to be careful selecting which bodies I would reincarnate inside of over the eons, because if I had been born with the wrong color of skin, or the wrong look, or was poor, or deformed, or different in any way, then I would have had to suffer the indignities wrought upon the victims of the prejudices of your people, demon. I honestly don't know at this point which is the lesser of two evils, allowing you to go on being you, or allowing them to go on being them. There's a part of me that just wants to push this button right now, but I'm going to leave the decision to you. What do you choose, Daniel Dwyer? Death so that they may live? Or would you sacrifice the whole lot of them because of your own fear of death, so that you may wander a barren planet alone for eternity? I choose compromise, he said. There must be a way that we can live in peace together. She laughed and said, I think not. You and I both know that if given the chance, you'd kill me at the earliest opportunity with no regret or remorse whatsoever. This world is no longer yours. You are defeated. Come now. Come and die with me as was always intended. I'm going to count backward from 10. If you are not here with me by the time I reach 0, nothing will remain of your precious people but a blackened stain on the side of the globe. 10. You bitch! Daniel yelled as he slammed his fist up against the dome. 9. Daniel was distraught. He was thinking of little more than his own self-preservation, his own will to survive, and he frantically looked around as if he were going to find something in the wilds that he could use as a tool to right the situation. 8. Then he caught a glimpse of his many children. They were scared that they were going to die, many fearful that he might not love them enough to sacrifice himself for their well-being, begging for him to save them, and his heart sank. 7. "All right," Daniel yelled. "Just please let me think for a second." Lylin shook her head at him and continued counting. 6. Her vision was always the same. He wouldn't let her get to 3. After she reaches 4 in her backward count, he would jettison from his vessel emissary, leaving it dead on the ground outside, and his spirit would then pass through the glass dome and through the energy field. It would attempt, no doubt, to physically arrest her, but once in the active machine would be not only incapable of escape, but also rendered intangible, resonating on a frequency designed to keep him from damaging the machine from within. The 20-second counter would begin, and then she would finally be able to relax. She would then say, "It is done, my love. You can come out now." She would be frightened, and she would cry, and she would press her palm to the glass wall of the dome in hopes that Hemhut would emerge in time at least to see her once more before her final death. Hemhut would breach the surface directly in front of where she stood with only moments to spare, and would watch her as she said her final words, and then watch as the demon disintegrated and the light also left her being. She didn't know if he was there or not, but she knew that he could hear her, so in her final seconds she said, "This is our last goodbye, my love. I wish I could be there with you, but I can't. This was the only way. Take good care of the people. Maybe you will succeed where both the demon and I failed. I love you." Her voice began to shudder as the countdown wound to its end, and with tears streaming from her eyes she ended with, "Always remember that I love you." And Hemhut, kneeling outside of the dome, his massive hand pressed against the glass opposite hers, let out a deafening cry of anguish, barely audible inside of the Angel Maker, but audible nonetheless, and thinking that she might have heard him, Lylin smiled at her faithful giant as the Angel Maker activated, and then she was gone. That was the end of her vision. That was how it always happened. Every time she had looked into this moment from the past, it always ended the same way, with the two of them dead, and Hemhut free to live again without fear. This was still what she saw, even as she said, 5. It wasn't until she said, 4, that everything derailed. 4. Instead of angrily submitting and rushing into the machine, he disappeared. The body of the emissary fell dead to the ground just as she'd foreseen, only Daniel had not entered the dome. He'd gone. "What?" she said aloud, confused by this unexpected turn of events. He had fled. He had chosen to preserve himself after all. Everything was ruined. "No," she said quietly to herself, then again louder, as she was robbed of her splendorous vision. The possible futures fell away from her mind, and just as her vision had engulfed the world as a wave, it collapsed as a wave. The wave of blindness washed over the survivors in their camp, stealing from her the sight of others, and then she was truly blind. She couldn't believe it. The demon had betrayed his children. After only a few moments' hesitation, she raised the triggering device up high and let out a frustrated scream from the very depths of her soul as she pressed the button. It was almost a full minute before she felt the tremors in the ground from the mighty blast that had finally annihilated mankind some distance away, and when she did, she began to cry sorrowfully, then collapsed to the floor and curled up into a ball. It was over. She'd failed. The children of Earth were now gone. Something must have happened that she could not see, that she could not anticipate. Hemhut would never be able to show himself now, and she caressed the floor as if she were touching him, as she lay there and cried. "I'm sorry, my love. I don't know what happened, but somehow the demon lives. Somehow he remains. I'm so sorry, but for your own protection you must remain where you are. It is not safe, Hemhut. I can no longer see the future. I don't know what's going to happen now. Somehow, the demon has stolen my powers from me. It's over. We've lost. I'm sorry. Hemhut could not hear her, nor was he alone. Daniel Dwyer 25, January 1st, 2056 AD. Up until a week earlier, there had been no sightings, no sign of the spirit in months. The world had collectively surmised, with the sudden appearance of Hannah Dunn's dead body, delivered to the Society Hall by the spirit just 1 week prior, that Daniel Dwyer was likely dead as well, though his physical whereabouts remained unknown, and there had been no further reported sightings. But dead as he was very much alive, and the whole of the world was about to meet him again for the first time. For in life, Daniel had been no individual, whereas in death he was not only everyone, but also himself besides. He could think, he could reason. His vision was clear, as was his purpose and drive. He was the Daniel Dwyer of Hannah Dunn's fantasy. He was here to save the world, and it was time he spoke to his flock. Over the 7 days since he'd come into his mind, he breathed deep the woes and joys of the world, and came to know the children of the earth for all of their simplicities and complexities, each and every individual, until he was truly one mind comprised of the memories of all people everywhere, concerned for both the individual and the whole of the flock. And he decided what to do, how to help them, and devised a plan to save them from themselves. Everyone everywhere heard his message. Not only did he assume control of the airwaves and broadcast his voice over the many communication devices around the globe so that he might be effectively heard by the masses, but he also commanded the bodies of those in isolation in order for them to hear his message spoken through their own mouths. He said the same thing to everyone, translated into the vast number of languages in existence around the world, all of which he now spoke fluently, so attuned to the memories of all the world as he'd become. It was a message of hope and peace, but many didn't see it that way. Many saw it as a declaration of war, and perceived his intrusion as an affront, but he would forgive them their misguided notions all. He understood their perspectives as he was truly all people in one mind, and he cared for all of them regardless of their feelings toward him. It was the beginning of the future, the promised future of Hannah Dunn. He was fulfilling his preordained role as the benevolent God she perceived him to be, manifesting his perceived destiny. His message is recited so frequently that scarcely a moment in human history has passed since it was first uttered wherein someone somewhere was not reading from it, resonating through history like the great speeches of the rulers of the bygone era. His voice was distinctive behind the voices of the vessels that he employed to deliver his message, and the tens of thousands of people who he'd selected to speak through spoke with a voice both their own and his. This was his message to the world. Children of earth, you need fear no more. Fear no more your brother or sister. Fear no more your illness or hopelessness or poverty. Fear no more death or pain that I can avert. My name is Daniel Dwyer, though I have been known by many names. Some call me the Spirit, the Shadow Man, others Mr. 8. None of these are my name. My name is Daniel Dwyer. I am not gone. I have only just arrived. As you can surmise, I am free to command any person's body I wish, which is the means by which I am communicating with you now. But fear me not, children, for I have come before you now with great tidings, and I bring with me much cause for celebration. Your world has seen an end to violence, as I will no longer allow for any person to raise their hand in anger against any other person. The anguish wrought upon you by those who would dominate you by means of violence will be tolerated no more. Those of you who have lived in fear of another may now come out of the shadows, for there is nothing more to fear. Your cages are open. There are to be no more slaves, No more subjugated, no more imprisoned, and no more dominated. But though your shackles have been removed, your hands are not free to fly. None of you, no single one of you, will ever be allowed to inflict harm or be allowed to come to harm by another human being ever again, starting from now and forever onward until the end of time. By my decree, no person shall be denied health care or medicine, left to die when they could have been saved, nor shall any person die exposed to the elements for lack of the means to acquire comfort. There shall be no more rotting food in view of the hungry, and there shall be no more vacant homes across from the camps of the homeless. The weapons of this world have now become useless, and are to be gathered and disposed of as I see fit. Furthermore, any parent that is unfit to raise a child will soon find that their children have gone, having been taken to a place where they will be safe from having their minds corrupted by ignorance or prejudice, free of the abuses inflicted upon their minds, no longer conduits to pass on the traditions of hate and divisiveness that seem infringed upon the very souls of so many of you. Your age-old religions and traditions that have for so long kept you at one another's throats, so long seen you turn your backs on each other, will soon be forgotten, seen for what they truly are. Only upon reaching adulthood may any individual from here on out decide if they choose to believe something baseless, and it will be strongly discouraged. Many of you are fearful right now that my presence will incite war, but allow me to put your minds at ease. There is no such thing as war anymore. There is no such thing as violence. I cannot yet say that there is no such thing as fear anymore, as so many of you are right now fearful, but I can assure you that your fears are misplaced. Take confidence, my children, take solace, comfort, for I have come, and your world is saved. Lylan 2.2, December 18th, 4004 BC. As they walked from the decimated village, having murdered its every inhabitant and flattened most of its structures, hands dripping with the blood of the innocent, Hemhut asked, "How is this helping them, Lylan? All we've been doing is killing people for weeks. It seems we are more a detriment than an aid to them." The future is not earth and soil or space and time. The future is the people of the world, its inhabitants. It is them that are important. It is by eliminating and shaping the bloodlines of man that the path before us is to be attained. In order for the proper lineage of man to propagate and events to result in the future that they are now destined for, certain of them must not be allowed to exist, just as certain of them that would not exist otherwise must come into being. If I were allowed more time, I could divine a way to achieve the changes we need without the bloodshed, redirecting the courses of lives so that they do not die needlessly. But the demon is coming for me. Once he finds me, I have only minutes before he focuses his power on my body and annihilates me. This is why we must kill so many, Hemhut. It is the fastest, most effective way to instill changes to the coming timeline. There is no time to do it any other way. I'm sorry, my love, she said, not nearly as blood-covered as the giant, but bloodied all the same, perched atop her throne. Don't be sorry, Lylan, he said. I know you. I know that you are only doing what you must, and that you do not revel in death, not like the way you tell of this demon with his bloodlust. No, and I am sorry also that we must now say goodbye, she said. So soon, he gulped. But I only just got you back. She caressed the side of his head and kissed his stony flesh and said, I know. But he has found me. He now sees squarely through my eyes, and he knows who I am. He is coming here, coming once more in an effort to destroy me. He sees you as well, my love, sees you through my own eyes. You have to go now. Hide somewhere I know not where. It is important that I am ignorant of your whereabouts when he closes in on me in a few minutes. Allow none to see you, and kill any that do without hesitation. Never quicken or slow your speed intentionally unless I bid you do otherwise. Until next we are together, walk as though I were directing your step, a pace your usual stride. He wants a certain body, Hemhut, one that will afford him powers beyond reason, and he must not have it. The future we are molding is designed to keep him from this eventuality, keep him from his prize, and coerce his unwitting soul into a body different from that which he is otherwise destined. Then you need not die, my love, Hamlet tried to reason. Show me to this body, and I will pulverize it. He surely cannot live in a body that is uninhabitable. She climbed down and smiled up at him as tears flowed down her little cheeks. You are sweet, Hamlet, and I wish it were that simple, but his intended vessel, the body he truly craves, has an important role to play in the shaping of the future, and you cannot destroy it. So long as he is prevented from claiming his prize, he can be subdued, but I must die now. I will see you again, my love. I love you. She hugged his waist again, and then turned her back to him, and faced the side of a craggy hill that led to a sheer cliff face. Now, go. I love you, he said, and he hesitated. You must go, Hamlet. Go now, she said. Then she heard his footsteps trail off behind her, and she began to climb the rocks. Her tears dried, and a hint of a scowl crossed her face, underlying the serenity of having reconciled her eventual fate, and she spoke as she scaled the crags and juts of the rocky terrain. Can you hear me, demon? She said, continuing to climb. Then she felt the rush through her being as he writhed, struggling to form, invisible in the space in and around her. Oh, there you are. She spoke calmly, hiding her frustration, withholding her desire to scream. You have lost, demon, she said. I have returned and once again changed the future to keep you from your prize, and I will keep coming back to stop you. Every time that you think that you are coming close to victory, I will be there to tear the ground out from under your feet. Every time you think you have a handle on this world, I will be there to pry your fingers from its throat. This world is mine. It will always be mine. She could feel the demon growing in strength as she reached the crest of the hill. I know what you want, demon. I see what you so desperately clamor for, where your gaze is fixed. She stood on the edge of the cliff and looked down at the jagged rocks far below. And I just wanted you to know that I have beat you, demon. You will never, ever have your prize. I will keep him from your grasp at the cost of all else if need be. You will never find him. You can't have him. And then she jumped to her death. As she fell, the demon materialized from the ether and began ravaging her body as it plummeted through the air, but he was too late. The rocks would claim her before he would have the chance to kill her. Hamhut could hear her quiet grunts of pain as the demon cut into her flesh while she descended, and he stopped walking and turned to face in her direction, far behind him, as she uttered her last words for the second time. Over the wind, she said to him, Until next we meet, farewell, my love. Then her body crashed against the rock face at the base of the cliff, and she was dead. Hamhut let out a deafening cry and held his hands to his face, but no tears left his eye despite his anguish. She was gone, having died again, and he was once more alone,